Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Addict's Advocate. I'm your host, Dusty Dean, and it is my pleasure to welcome back Robert. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you. I hope everything's been well with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy to be back talking to you again.
good to see you too. So it's been February. February is when we spoke last. So we're looking at what a good 6-8 months here, whatever. Give me an update. How's things going?
Things are going well. I'd say things are going well. Not perfect, but I don't think anybody has really a perfect life. So recovery wise, I'll just jump out of the gate saying that I did have a little relapse. A little mishap, I guess. And I talked to Sam about it. I saw Sam was on your show, so try not to name drop or anything, but
It's all right.
it's knowledge that Sam exists. So it only lasted 2 days. Put myself in a pretty dumb position. Made some bad choices and didn't enjoy it at all. Just relapsed on alcohol with my DOC and got back on track right away. So that would have been in April. April. Five months. 'Cause I had
Okay.
6 months of sobriety, and since then, just buckled down and focused back in on recovery and priorities and just dealing with life like one day at a time. Taking steps to improve my life and find some peace and some happiness amongst the stress and the day to day. In June, I closed on my first house, bought a home. So I'm still employed. I'm spending a lot of time with my daughter. Bought a house that's really close to the high school in the city that I live in. So it's a historic neighborhood. It's a small house, but it's just the two of us. So I don't need anything extravagant or fancy, but it was an accomplishment. Might not have been just the wisest choice financially, even looking at the numbers, investing money. It it's still an investment, but I turned 40 last year, and I just turned 41 this month, and I always wanted to buy a house, but by the time I was 40, and I kind of made that happen. So, and it allowed me to do some other things. I've wanted a dog for many years. I haven't had a dog since I was probably 14 years old, and I always told myself I didn't want to have a dog living in an apartment, moving from apartment to apartment, not owning. And within a few months, I went and got a rescue puppy, and she's here in the room with me tearing things apart, and she brings me a lot of joy. It's another responsibility to have, but brings me a lot of joy. So this is really one of the life updates right there.
I appreciate it, bud. Happy birthday, first of all.
Thank you.
There's something to be said about accomplishing things in sobriety. I think that there also becomes a sense of gratitude that you're conscious and you're physically there doing it. But also, you took on a responsibility now with the pet, and I think that's good, right? Because it gives us some away time from us struggling, and they provide us with joy in lots of different ways. I've got a 30-pound fur butt, Munchkin butt, we call her, and she's a Frenchie, and she's a pain in the butt, and we love her to death, and she's fun. So
I've met her, I believe, actually. So
yeah, you did it. So that's good, man. That's awesome. Do you believe that addiction is truly a disease? Oh, beautiful.
I got to show her off. So this is Juniper.
Juniper.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous, man.
Chihuahua, maybe, supposedly.
Yeah,
But yeah,
she's a little bit
Juniper,
bigger.
and she's got a ton of nicknames too. So
Yeah. Fun.
yeah. A little sidetracked there, but
That's okay. Do you believe that addiction is truly a disease?
absolutely.
Okay.
I do, just because I could speak, from firsthand experience. But I mean, oh, trying to think if I don't know if I've ever looked up the definition of a disease, but I think it could fall under that definition, certainly. Whether if it's physical or mental health disorder or both, it can certainly lead to major physical symptoms. That I've suffered from, as well as mental health, psychological symptoms. So yeah, I mean, that's what I believe for sure, hands down, that it's a disease. And I mean, there's treatment for it. That could, be a long discussion. I kind of got some little side notes, just the questions that you gave me. Kind of just made a few notes, and it was. I feel it's more fluid to kind of expand on that in real time through a discourse than just
Yeah.
writing down like a dissertation. So, but for
No,
that
for
question,
for sure.
I only wrote one word. Absolutely, I think that addiction is a disease.
Yeah, you made me want to go look it up. So you go to Google and you type in what is a disease, right? What's the definition? And it says here that a disorder of structure or function in a human, animal, or a plant, especially one that has a known cause and is in a distinctive group of symptoms.
I think that kind of nails it down, and I mean it's recognized by the medical community as a disease.
Yeah,
I mean they're
yeah,
changing the names for it now. Alcohol
yeah.
use disorder or substance use disorder. And
Well, I think they can psychiatrically too, kind of maybe address it too, and sometimes that's meds and stuff, right? And I think
yeah,
that's powerful, right?
yeah.
Um, so, what has helped you during this time, during the time of sobriety that you've had now?
Uh, a few things. So I have not been super active in 12-step programs. I am a fan of AA. I think that AA does more good than harm. Significantly, I don't think that program is totally harmless. It's more or less just such an unregulated program. Individuals' experiences can vary greatly. I don't really do AA. Again, if anybody ever comes to me, asking about sobriety, I say get to a meeting. I think that's a great idea for people to do that. The meetings are going to vary regionally, even micro regionally, locally. But for me, I'm checking in with trusted people and brothers and sisters in recovery. That definitely helps a lot. Even you just sent me a text message, last weekend where I put myself in a situation where I was around alcohol, not planning on drinking, and I probably wasn't going to drink, but I was kind of getting that feeling like, oh, uh, it might be more fun to celebrate and to out at this recreational activity, camping. It was kind of an organized camping event with lots of alcohol available, um, and I ended up leaving that night and coming back the next day, which is fine. If I probably should have checked in with somebody else before you checked in with me, and I did have people there that I could lean on to, people in recovery at that event, and people just on speed dial on my phone and whatnot. I think for me, playing the tape back too, that's where if I feel like drinking and I think that it sounds like a good idea, I just realize where it's gotten me and how fast the downward spiral happens for me. So we probably touched on this last time. I never suffered any real physical damage as far as internal organ failure, kidney failure, permanent liver damage. As far as I know, all my labs have always been good. But I can't really ever drink again because of the kindling effect, which is something I have Googled. I've read lots of articles about it. It's not widely known, but there's some scholarly articles about the kindling effect, which is basically for those alcoholics out there that have detoxed multiple times. Every detox has potential to be worse um, over repeated exposures to starting and stopping, and just increases the potential for seizures. And basically, to sum it up, that I know that if I was to even drink a fairly small amount, let's say like a 6 pack, even if it was just light beer, that's nothing to a normal alcoholic. Well, for one, I have no tolerance at this point, so I probably get a pretty good buzz. But tomorrow I would be shaking and sweating and in a pretty severe state of detox because my brain's just kind of hardwired and primed to react that way to the withdrawal symptoms. And alcohol detox is my own personal hell that I have lived through more times than I want to even recount, and I don't ever want to go there again. So that's just a huge, disincentive to want to drink, knowing that I'll basically any alcohol is almost just another trip to a 30-day facility, and I don't want to put my life. I don't mind those little what they call like the sticky slipper vacations. You get some rubber socks, keep yourself safe in a rehab facility for 30 days, acknowledging you know what the consequences are, and appreciating the life that I have, free from addiction. And I do get pretty minor cravings. I don't get those cravings that used to pop up sometimes where basically they would take control. We kind of talk about some of the medical stuff behind the science stuff behind it, of some of the analogies that we've seen of the trap door. That once it's open, I'm not the science guy, but uh, we learned that in some group sessions in recovery, and basically you're defenseless against having that first drink um, at those certain stages and without the right tools. Um, and honestly, some of the silly little adages and idioms that you hear in recovery, just repeating some of those silly little things back, just kind of keep me going throughout the day, if that's what I need. And again, it's not very common or frequent that I get an urge, so I don't honestly think about it a whole lot. Um, but those times where I do think about it, I just have to be honest with myself and just recognize like how fucking serious it is. Like, this is not a joke. Having a couple beers just to relax or because I think I deserve it or something, I'm not afforded that luxury anymore. So I just got to be honest with myself.
Great stuff. Great wisdom, dude. Very mature response. Just I can just tell, and just your demeanor and your mannerisms, and the amount of education that you have since I've talked to you last is mind blown. I think one thing that you did that was brilliant is talking about that trigger of being at a campsite, good times and everything, and having the courage to remove yourself from that situation, dude. I commend you, because that's sometimes it's the simplest thing to do. Just get yourself out of there. Right?
Yeah.
Get out, run away if you need to. Right? This kindling effect is a scary notion, right? Because for those that are unaware of it, or those that can't control it as much, they can't stay sober. Um, maybe the detox can kill you, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yep. And I've spent many nights where intake in rehabs where I don't have my meds yet and they don't have anything on hand, and I've still laid on the couch right outside the nurse station. Basically, like I can't sleep. I'm just waiting for them to be able, waiting for 6 o'clock in the morning when they can actually call and ask if they can give it to me early or something. And pretty much in fear for my life, because the level of anxiety and fear that come with alcohol detox, for me, that's how I detox, is just there's a lot of physical symptoms too, but it's a psychological fear. It's just pure unadulterated fear. It feels like you've just been mainlined, like however many cc's directly into your bloodstream, just liquid fear.
Saying the silly little things. I love it. It does work, right? Because it's a distraction. It's a, play the tape is always a good one, right? Um, one day at a time is just that, because the notion is that this disease reminds us it's around, right?
Yeah.
It's just sitting back there hanging out. Definitely, you've already given me some really good gems of wisdom there. How has your self will been affected in your sobriety? Do you feel like you're stronger minded? Do you feel like you can, because of your knowledge now, what you just said, right? Probably within the first sip of that beer that you're going down a path, and you're playing that tape forward, and yeah, it's it's pretty hardcore, man.
Yeah. And the self-will thing, I don't know if I've figured it out yet. I know people that have quit using self-will and maybe they're happy. It's a really touchy subject when speaking about self-will and recovery with AA. So it's, you're going to get a lot of folks from AA that are going to, they'll tell you straight up, without a higher power and relying on self-will, you'll fail your relapse. And that might be true in many, many cases. It might not. Again, it's, more or less kind of a, a disorganized organization. I don't want to say that in a bad way. It's just not. Um,
There's a lot of services out there now, right, that are kind of in some way, shape, and form competing with them. People that are religiously going to AA, I think they're definitely a certain way about how they're looking at their life and their outlook and everything else too. And I want to be conscious of what that path looks like for me, right? And it is kind of what I make it. I feel like this is best version of ourselves time, and kind of doing whatever it takes to get back that quality of life again, instead of being just constantly reminded of it. Why do you think addiction is so hard to break?
I mean, like, more or less, like, technically speaking, there is no cure, right? I mean, if there was a cure, then all these residential rehabs and detox centers would be out of business, and AA wouldn't have a membership base. So, without a cure, and it being more or less a lifelong disease that just does get worse and worse over time. In my experience, I mean, I believe that anecdotally in
Yeah.
my case, and from what I've seen with most people, that it's forever. And some people can just put it down and that's it and walk away. So again, it's, there's always going to, at least there's a lot of research being done about it. I think that's a good thing, is that research is continuously being done. But it's hard to break because it for one, it's stigmatized, and then the recovery aspect is monetized. And the recovery aspect, like as far as medications and inpatient treatment, that's monetized. AA is not. It's one of the great things about AA. I do think it's a great organization. That recovery is free, um, but it just comes with you putting in the work. But other than that, like detox, I can speak from experience. I've been in a very wide range of quality of rehab, basically quality of treatment centers, to some pretty nice ones where I enjoyed my stay with qualified, mostly qualified folks working there, to some that aren't nearly as good. I left one last year and ended up going back to SVR. It was my second time at SVR. I was there twice in 2023, and I left one that it felt dehumanizing. And I think that doesn't encourage the folks. Some of the folks that need the help the most are the ones that the help is not available. Quality help is not available to them. Um, so that makes it really challenging. I'm in a situation where I have an understanding employer. I have programs through my employer um, to help. Thankfully, I have not been to rehab this year in 2024, but in 2023, I went to several detox centers. I did 2 30-day stays, and in 2022 it was the same. I went a couple times. In 2021, I went a few times. I actually changed companies, but I was working in the same field, and I've been afforded that. And a lot of people don't have that, so that's just gonna make it really challenging. And somebody who was at 40 able to buy a house, I have felt the hopelessness for many years of just struggling to get by. And when you are struggling all the time, you kind of just you lose hope, and you lose that motivation, and things seem unfair because they are fucking unfair. Life is hard, and it's just a huge challenge to overcome a lot of those obstacles. And that kind of just keeps that cycle going, where alcohol will make you feel a little bit better, or drugs will make you feel a little bit better. And then if you're unfortunate enough that you might have that gene. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I think it works in the combination of being the genetic predisposition plus the introduction to whatever that substance is will cause the addiction. But I think somebody that's exposed enough that might not have that genetic predisposition, they just might like the way it makes them feel so much they continue to use it. So yeah, it's definitely challenging. to break that cycle, especially without the proper resources, and then with that stigmatization that comes with it. People are basically just discarded in the city that I live in. There's a growing homeless or unhoused population, and a lot of that's probably due to addiction and mental illness, maybe the combination of both. But once those people are basically discarded and not afforded, opportunities to get out of that, it's like, what can we do for them without, how do we expect them to get out of that? Maybe tell them pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I think they would have done that already if that was, that easy to do. So, yeah, and those that are the functional alcoholics, maybe, that kind of leads into that stigmatized thing too, where they don't want to acknowledge it, and maybe their family won't acknowledge it because they're well-to-do, and they just can't be honest with themselves, and will just continue, and if they have the financial ability to just drink and party or do whatever all the time, and it's not hurting them that way, then they'll just continue to do it.
Thank you for that. What do you think are the three biggest mistakes that would lead someone to relapse?
Oh man, I had to think about this question for a little bit. I did read this. So my first thought that comes to me is that I wouldn't look at a relapse necessarily being caused by a mistake. And I
Okay.
didn't really flesh that out in my mind. I think sometimes relapses can just happen and it's not from a mistake that's been made. And that's just me
Well, just
trying
because
to,
you're perfectly capable to make the choice and go and have the drink, so it's
yeah,
not a mistake. Yeah. So
yeah.
everything up to that point failed in your attempt to stay sober, right? I mean, as
I,
far as in that moment.
Yeah, I think just using the word mistake makes me feel like I've done something wrong, and maybe I did do something wrong. I don't know. It seems like a negative, and I don't want to all. I mean, relapses are a negative thing, so I mean, maybe I overthink and overanalyze things. I apologize for that. So, but no, I
It's
did kind
okay.
of expand on some of it a little bit, and I think that for one, relapse can be part of the recovery process. Um, I think a lot of folks in recovery have had relapses. I don't think it's uncommon at all. Um,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
so I think some states of mind, some actions, there's some things that can lead to relapse that could be considered, that mistake that you were asking about. And that could be complacency, feeling too comfortable after a period of sobriety, misplaced confidence in yourself, or, not being honest with yourself, thinking that you can moderate. And if you've read the AA Big Book, I have many times. I've got multiple copies on the shelf right behind me. Um, a lot of alcoholics have tried to moderate, or like I said, switch from beer to wine, or whiskey to
Doesn't work.
vodka, or whatever. There's still that desire to try to moderate or try to use alcohol, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, kind
So
of
yeah,
normalize it,
yeah,
normalize themselves.
yeah. So not being honest with yourself, and then of course, like we were just talking about, me going camping with 5 months sober, with 500 men, men only event, unnameable amount of alcohol. That's people, places, and things. So putting yourself in places with people, to I think if you're in recovery, you should use your judgment, use critical thinking about what you're doing, where you're doing it, who you're doing it with, and what is going to be around there, whether it's some unknown trigger, some doing an activity, or around things that you drank before in the past, or that you've enjoyed more because of drinking. So think about it. If you want to try it, try it. But think about the repercussions, and maybe you can still enjoy that activity. You probably will enjoy it more without drinking, but use judgment, and before those people, places, and things.
Thank you for that.
Hmm.
If you had somebody that you love struggling with addiction, how would you love them? How would you address that?
Ooh, so these last two questions are I mean, they're all big questions, they're all hard questions, but a lot to unpack from a question like that. And I think you have to consider what the relationship is, what your role in the relationship is, how that addiction is affecting you, if you're doing anything to remedy that or offer help, or if you're contributing to that addiction. I think one of the hardest things would be for a parent to have a child that is in active addiction. I put my mother through it, and my mom went to Al-Anon. She had never heard of it. She had dealt with me being an alcoholic for many, many years, and I was probably just drunk. And, I had moved back from Texas when I was in my mid 30s and had to stay there. And probably the peak of my drinking, when it was the worst, and put my poor mother through hell. And I told her about Al-Anon, and she went, and that helped her. And I'm trying to think of like what she supported me. She always supported me. I mean, she was fed up with my bullshit for sure, and she never gave up. So I think maybe to answer this question, I could, just take some inspiration. And if it's somebody that you love, then try to understand, try to do some research. Um, don't give up. Tough love, I think, can be helpful. I mean, it's going to just depend on so many factors. There's no one answer. There's no easy answer. But if it's somebody that you love, then I say don't give up. Try to help. Um, let them know what they're doing is hurting you, maybe. But I don't know how far that's going to go. It could fall on deaf ears. The active addict is they're they're not a person that's going to really be making a lot of rational decisions or listening to that kind of advice. But breakthrough is possible. You might be that spark that causes that self-reflection, that moment when the addict realizes what their actions are causing other people, what kind of harm their actions are causing, and that could be that catalyst for them to finally, make an attempt to seek help. And they may stumble, they may fall, they may take steps backwards. But if someone is making an effort, especially, and I think that's one thing that my mom saw in me, is that I think she knew I was suffering and that I wanted to get better.
I think that once you start introducing another person into a relationship, right, with addiction, then you have to do your best to try to separate the one that you love with the addiction, kind of, just as far as, the control of it, right? And then I think that you need to take care of yourself in the process of dealing with that, right? And recognize that a lot of those lashing outs and things like that are not the true person.
Yep.
You have to take care of yourself in the process of trying to take care of somebody else too, right? Just as much as we have to, to exhibit self-care upon ourselves, right? Um, yeah, I think understanding and researching it, trying to get part of that separation is understanding the biological nature of what's taking place. I think that has got so much fruit to it. So, um, this has been fun, man. I appreciate you. Um,
Yeah, thanks for giving me the invite. It's good to hop on here, and it's good to be immersed again in recovery, because I haven't been super active in recovery. And it's good to talk about it again. I told myself last winter I'm gonna start going to AA like all the time when the weather's nice, and then as soon as summer hit, it's too hot to go anywhere. I don't even want to ride my Harley, so maybe I need a little provocation. I do appreciate it. And yeah, it's great to talk to you and have that discourse.
yeah, I appreciate you. Part of the reason why I enjoy doing this is because I know that if somebody can't physically get themselves somewhere, they don't want to jump on a Zoom. they can spend some time just listening to other stories such as yourself and spend time in contemplation in their own recovery. Things will resonate. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. So I'm excited to do it. So I appreciate your time tonight, bud.
Yeah, thank you.
You take care, okay?
Yep, I'll talk to you later, man. Take care.
Bye.